The hollow below. It started with a rumor, the kind that only desperate men believe. We were 5 in total: Mason, Clyde, Jeremy, Drew, and myself, Russell. We'd been working odd jobs in Montana, hopping from mine site to mine site, never staying too long in one place, mostly because there was nothing left to find. But Jeremy got wind of something. He met an old man in a bar in Deer Lodge, half drunk and rambling about untouched veins and cursed ground. Most folks would have ignored him, not us. The money had run out, the frost was setting in early, and our pride wouldn't let us crawl back to our families broke. The old man's directions took us west, deep into the Garnet Range. We hiked for nearly 2 days, burdened with gear and hope, until we stumbled upon the entrance of an old mine tucked behind a fallen pine. No markings, no warning signs, no road, just a black mouth yawning in the hillside. The air that poured out of it was colder than the mountain wind, and it carried a scent that none of us could name. Not rot, not sulfur, something hollow. We set up camp nearby and agreed to start fresh the next morning. Drew, being the most experienced with equipment, did a systems check while Jeremy cataloged supplies. Mason and Clyde started clearing the entrance with shovels and picks. I watched the tree line, chewing tobacco to fight the unease nesting in my stomach. That night, the wind howled like a wounded animal. The tent flaps rattled. I didn't sleep much, but when I did, I dreamed of voices whispering from the earth. Voices speaking in tones too low for human throats. We entered the mine just after sunrise. Flashlights cut through the dark like knives through tar. It wasn't just narrow, it was wrong. The tunnel curved at odd angles, sloped when it should have stayed level. About 40 feet in, Jeremy found a discarded pickaxe wedged into the wall. It was rusted to hell, but the handle looked almost new. That should have been our first clue. We kept digging. For the first week, nothing but quartz and dust. No gold. But we pressed deeper. On the 8th day, Drew uncovered something odd, a seam of dark stone, smooth and glistening like obsidian, but it pulsed slightly under the light, like it was breathing. Clyde cracked a joke about finding the devil's toenail, but nobody laughed. We decided to follow the seam. It led us to a chamber larger than we expected, shaped like a natural cave, but too symmetrical. The walls shimmered with veins of gold, so pure they seemed to glow. It was more than any of us had ever seen. Mason whooped, dropped to his knees, and started chipping away like a man possessed. That's when the air changed. It thickened, turned sour and metallic. Our lamps dimmed without explanation, and our breath misted even though we were underground. I told them something was wrong, but nobody listened. Gold does that to men. It makes them deaf to anything but greed. By day 12, we stopped leaving the mine. We brought cots inside the chamber and slept beside our haul. Mason started getting nosebleeds, thick black rivulets down his lips. Drew wouldn't talk, just stared at the stone wall like it held answers. Jeremy swore he kept hearing a heartbeat echoing from the rocks, and Clyde had gone silent altogether. One night, I awoke to the sound of something scraping. I sat up, thinking maybe it was one of the guys digging in the dark, but all of them were still in their cots, mouths slack, breathing shallow. The scraping came again, closer now. I grabbed my light and pointed it toward the tunnel entrance. Nothing. But when I turned around, Drew was gone. We searched for hours. His cot was still warm, but there were no footprints, no signs of struggle. The only thing we found was his helmet, cracked down the middle like someone had squeezed it in a vise. Clyde blamed the cave-in theory, but there was no rubble, no collapse, just empty space where Drew had been. That morning, or what we thought was morning, Mason insisted we go deeper. He'd found more gold veins further along the wall, past a narrow fissure that none of us had noticed before. Jeremy and I refused, but Clyde backed him up. So we split. Mason and Clyde vanished into the crack with the dynamite and a flashlight. Jeremy and I stayed behind with the haul. That was the last time I saw either of them alive. The next 2 days were madness. The mine grew colder with each passing hour. Our watches stopped ticking. We started hearing voices, always just out of earshot, always familiar. I heard my father calling my name. He's been dead 12 years. Jeremy heard his little brother, who drowned in a river when they were kids. On the 3rd day, the fissure split wider, with a sudden, deafening crack, a sound like bone breaking under pressure. I crawled toward it with Jeremy, and we peered in. No sign of Mason or Clyde. Just another tunnel, darker than night, sloping steeply downward into the unknown. Jeremy broke. He packed his bag and told me he was leaving, that we'd been cursed the moment we entered. I didn't argue. I just gave him a flashlight and wished him luck. I never saw him again. Now I was alone. The chamber felt smaller without them. The gold veins seemed duller, the voices louder. I started talking to myself just to drown them out. Sometimes, I'd wake up and find my gear rearranged, my food missing, even though no one else was there. One night, I swear I saw Drew standing just beyond the tunnel entrance, naked and pale, his eyes completely black. When I ran toward him, he vanished like smoke. The worst was the laughter. It started as a whisper, but grew louder with each passing hour. It sounded like children at first, then old men, then something in between. Mocking, guttural, inhuman. I tried leaving. I packed light, took only what I needed, but no matter how far I walked, the tunnel kept leading me back to the chamber. It didn't matter which direction I chose. Left, right, uphill, downhill, the mind folded in on itself like a maze designed by a madman. The gold began to rot. I don't know how else to describe it. The bright, shiny metal turned dull, greenish, then black. It oozed a thick fluid that smelled like rust and vinegar. My fingers started peeling. My teeth loosened. I bled from my ears when I tried to sleep. The whispers told me things, horrible things, about what lived below, about the first miners who came here and never left, about the hunger that sleeps under stone. I gave up trying to leave and instead tried going deeper. Maybe that's what it wanted. Maybe it needed me to see. I lit my last flare and descended through the fissure Mason had opened. What I found down there, I can't even write it clearly. The tunnel led to a cathedral of rock, massive and circular, with walls covered in symbols I couldn't understand. Bones littered the floor, human, animal, things in between, and in the center, a hole, a perfect black void, deeper than anything man has ever dug. It was breathing. The air pulsed, like lungs expanding and contracting. I stood at the edge and felt something watching me, not from below, but from behind the stone itself. Something ancient, starving. Then I saw them. Mason, Clyde, Drew, Jeremy, or things that used to be them. Their skin was stretched tight, eyes gone, mouths fused shut. They crawled toward me without sound, without mercy, leaving streaks of blood where their hands dragged. I ran. I don't know how long it's been since then. Days? Weeks? My flashlight died. My food ran out. I'm not even sure I'm still alive. Sometimes I sleep, and in my dreams, I'm outside, under the sky. But when I wake up, I'm always here. There's no more gold, just hunger, just the hollow below. If anyone finds this journal, burn it. Don't read it. Don't come looking. Let the mountain keep its secret. Let me rot in the dark.